Alright, welcome back to Star Ocean Anamnesis. So, today I have a guide on Blossom Diaz for you. Alright, let's get started. Blossom Diaz is a defender and sharpshooter hybrid. His first talent, Tournament Winner, gives the entire party anti-flinch of 15% HP or less and gives Blossom Diaz a taunt plus 3. So this is a pretty basic anti-flinch. It's 15% HP, which isn't a lot, but he is a sharpshooter, so it does help a little bit, and taunt plus 3 helps him to draw aggro a little better, which helps him fulfill his makeshift defender role. And then we have his second talent, Competitive Intuition, which increases the damage that you deal by 45% and reduces the attack and in-damage that you take by 25% for the character that's being targeted by the enemy. This only applies to the character that's being targeted by the enemy, and they get a 45% damage buff, which is still very good, seeing as how 40% is kind of our average. I would say 50% actually, so 45% not bad, and the attack and in-damage reduction make that character a bit more tanky, so this is mostly made for the character that's going to play the tank. And then his third talent, A Cherished Ring, increases the damage that you deal by 60% and increases your critical hit chance by 20% for everybody in the party that's not being targeted. And this one applies to everybody that's not being targeted, so it's a 60% damage buff, which is the highest damage buff that we currently have, and it's practically unconditional as long as you have Blossom Diaz in the party and he can draw aggro. And then the 20% critical hit chance, that's also a nice bonus to increasing your damage output as long as you have some form of crit damage up. And then his last talent, A Heart Transforming, increases his attack, defense, and HP by 15%, 20%, and 35%. And then here we have some buffs that make his stats seem a bit more reasonable. So HP sitting at 19,000, which is very good for a sharpshooter. Attack 2,800, which is about right for an offensive sharpshooter, and then defense 2100, that's very high, so it actually means that he can fulfill his tank duties very well. And then onto his battle skills. First up we have Lightning Chain. Blossom, unleash an orb of lightning that takes an odd trajectory. Its power is determined by multiplying attack by 160%, it does 9 hits, costs 16 AP, and it has a lightning element. This attack is similar to Maria's Raptor Shot, except it costs less AP, but it does less damage as well, but it has the same amount of hits, so it's also very decent for racking up the hit count. But you're mostly going to use this to fill up your combo, so usually at the start of your combo you would use this, or somewhere in the middle. And then up next we have Flying Guillotine. Blossom, hurl a sword made of energy. Its power is determined by multiplying attack by 310%, it does 4 hits, and it costs 19 AP. So this is the standard guillotine attack, and while guillotine is always a very good attack, Diaz has two other skills that are incredibly good, a lot better than Guillotine, and Guillotine doesn't make for a great combo opener when you consider the fact that Lightning Chain has a lower AP cost, so usually I don't recommend running this. And then we have Dancing Sword. Blossom, bring your foe close and assail them with a spin attack. Its power is determined by multiplying attack by 1300%, it does 7 hits, and it costs 40 AP. This is a close range attack, and it has a huge 1300% multiplier. It only costs 40 AP too, and I say only because usually attacks with multipliers like this go up to like 50 AP, so that's very good, and it's also quite fast. Unfortunately, Diaz jumps into the air when he does this, and he doesn't have an air dodge, so he can't dodge out of it, which leaves him wide open, and seeing as how you're standing in close range, that gets kind of dangerous. And then we have Phoenix Drive. Transform your fighting spirit into a phoenix and launch it at the enemy. Its power is determined by multiplying attack by 520%, it does 2 hits, costs 20 AP, and it has a fire element. This is his other main damage attack. Phoenix Drive is absolutely amazing. It's really fast, it only does 2 hits, so the animation is very short. It only costs 20 AP, which is just one more than Guillotine, but it's way better, has a higher multiplier, like I said, it's faster, and it has a fire element to it, so you can use this from range as well. So usually I recommend using this as his main damage skill instead of the close range Blossom, because this is a lot safer. And lastly we have his Rush. Phoenix Blast Wave. Transform into a phoenix and fire a flame tornado at the enemy. Its power is determined by multiplying attack by 4500%, it has a fire element, and as a post-rush buff it increases single target damage for the entire party by 30% and AP recovery speed for the entire party by 50%. A 4500% multiplier is huge. In fact, that rivals some of our other carry type characters like Sweet Verda or Devil Claire. They have similar rushes. It's not the highest because currently that belongs to Blossom Maria, and Arngrim has a 5000% rush, but Even though this has a 4500% multiplier, it's not going to do as much damage as Sweet Verda, for instance, because Diaz over here is not meant to be a DPS character, so he doesn't have the proper buffs, but still, it can do a lot of damage. Personally, I would put this somewhere halfway through the rush chain and leave the last couple of slots for the carry type characters, but that post-rush buff is actually very interesting because it gives you single target damage, which, as you might know, that's something that defenders usually come with, and AP recovery speed that's usually only good for Diaz and other long-range characters. But that single target damage buff is actually kind of interesting because it gives Diaz basically everything that all of our current defenders have, so it means that as long as you're running Blossom Diaz, you don't really have a reason to run a defender unless you want some kind of HP buffing, which Diaz doesn't have. But like I said, aside from that, he does pretty much everything a defender can do, so that makes him a very good sharpshooter. And as for his equipment, daggers always have a very good selection of free weapons to choose from, so the first one I recommend are the Golden Thunderblades. They have an 840 attack stat, and they imbue your attacks with lightning. Assuming that you have these max limit broken, these are actually better than the Golden Bolt Destroyers, but if you don't, then you might want to run the Golden Bolt Destroyers because they actually have an attack factor as their last factor, so if you've got these max limit broken, run these. If not, run the Golden Bolt Destroyers. And now, before I get into the gacha weapons, I just want to say that pretty much every single elemental dagger that you can get from the gacha works with Diaz, but these two are the ones that I find to be the best. So, first of all, the Luminous Laser Blades, which have a 963 attack stat, and they imbue your attacks with Dark, gives you AP recovery plus 30%, and at max limit break you unlock attack plus 5%. First of all, not many bosses are weak to Dark, if I recall correctly, but that's not why we run this. We run this weapon because of that second factor. AP recovery speed works out very well for Diaz because he doesn't really get that much out of AP on normal, so you want standing AP recovery, and because of that, I recommend these. And then the other gacha weapon that I recommend are the Blue Flame Blade Lunar Howl. That's a mouthful. So these imbue your attacks with fire, give you damage reduction by 10%, increase rush mode damage by 15%, and have a 960 attack stat. And just like the Luminous Laser Blades, these are good because of their second factor. The damage reduction means that Diaz gets a bit more tanky, and it stacks with Diaz's attack and in damage reduction, so it makes him a whole lot more tanky. But like I said, every single elemental dagger is good. Like the Bloodstone Protectors have that Guts, which is very good, and the Ceremonial Anemones have an attack damage reduction, which actually that doesn't really work with Diaz, so forget about that one. And as for accessories, you can run a lot of things with Diaz, but the one thing that I find to be the most consistent is the Valentine's Pouch, which increases your HP by 5% and recovers 2% HP every 5 seconds. The reason being that Diaz doesn't have a way to recover his health, not in his talents, and not many daggers have lifesteal, so you might as well throw it on an accessory. And the reason why I'm not running the Christmas Reindeer is because Diaz doesn't really get much out of the AP reduction. You could actually run the Jet Black Beret, which gives you 3% HP recovery every 5 seconds, but then you have a useless second factor, so it's either this or the Jet Black Beret. Make that choice yourself. As for battle skills, that should be pretty obvious for Diaz, so I recommend Phoenix Drive as his main attack. It's very fast, does a lot of damage, and it doesn't cost a lot of AP, plus it has that fire element, so you can do some shenanigans with a non-elemental dagger if you want. And then secondly, we have Dancing Sword Blossom, because it's a close range attack, so you could charge assault that, get in close range, and then charge assault back out with Phoenix Drive, so you can just move around the arena like that. And then lastly, we have Lightning Chain Blossom, which is your combo opener usually. And with this skill set, we can run a combo like this: a normal attack into Phoenix Drive, into Lightning Chain, into as many Phoenix Drives as you can fit. If you want the close range combo, that's just a simple Lightning Chain into Phoenix Drive into Dancing Sword. So, this combo is very safe, which of course comes down to the fact that you can use it from range, which gives you plenty of time to dodge, and you don't have to go into close range with Dancing Sword and then you put yourself wide open when you're actually using it. So, it does a lot of damage as well. It racks up the hit count decently well too, because of how fast Phoenix Drive is. So overall, pretty good combo. So for the party recommendation, Diaz is actually a very interesting party member, because like I said, he covers both the defender and sharpshooter role, so you can actually stick both roles into one slot, which is cool. So the first character that I recommend you pair him up with is Dark Albo. He increases the entire party's attack stat by 45, 50, or 55%, depending on what the hit count is sitting at. He increases the hit count timer by 1 second, and he also reduces the defense of every enemy by 30% post-rush. And then the second character I recommend is a Summer Sophia. She buffs attack and in damage for the entire party by 20%. She also recovers AP for the entire party by a certain amount whenever she uses one of her offensive attacks, and she also racks the hit count pretty quickly. And then for the last slot, I recommend a Lizard. He can convert 50% of the characters into their attack stat. He also buffs int by 20% for the entire party, and he's also really good at building the hit count. This party is kind of a makeshift hit count based party, so we have Albo with the hit count based attack buff, and then Lizard and Summer Sophia can both rack up the hit count pretty quickly. Diaz is also not that bad at it. And we're not running the Defender because, like I said, Diaz has the Defender role pretty much down pat, so Diaz is going to be drawing aggro, which means he gets a reduced damage buff, unfortunately, but everybody gets an increased damage buff. Then we have Lizard buffing int for Summer Sophia, with Summer Sophia buffing attack and int damage for everybody else, supplying everybody with AP, of course, and Lizard with the int to attack buff for Diaz and Albo, very nice, and then Albo hit counter plus 1 second helps everybody build the hit count. Alright, in short, Diaz is a very powerful character because he mixes 2 roles into one. He's got the damage buffing of a sharpshooter paired with the usual abilities of a defender, like the single target damage, the anti-flinch, as well as the attack and int damage reduction. Because of this, he's actually very good in public lobbies, although not that great in pre-made lobbies. He's still good, but his damage buffing is top tier. Unfortunately, his defender talents are kind of on the low end with that 15% anti-flinch. The attack damage and int damage reduction, that's nice, and the single target damage, that's a little lower than Winter Eve. And speaking of the damage buffs, Diaz gives every single character in the party a 60% damage buff almost unconditionally. 60% is currently the highest damage buff that we have in the game. 9S gets up to about 55%. You've got Bride Maria, who reaches 60%, but she needs a very high hit count to get to that point. And now we also have Opera, but she only does that for long-range characters. So, Diaz, 60%, incredible. Unfortunately, one of Diaz's downsides is that he doesn't possess any healing of his own. Diaz is meant to be a character that draws aggro, which means that he's going to get hit once and again, and he doesn't have a way to heal up that damage. Unfortunately, he also uses daggers, and daggers don't really have any lifesteal talents to speak of, which means that you're gonna have to rely on your accessories. Accessory healing also isn't that great to begin with, which means that the actual healing comes down to your teammates. So if you ever get into a public party that doesn't have a healer or a vampire victor of some sort, you're going to be in a bad way. Regardless, Diaz is a very powerful character, and because he mixes 2 roles into one, that means that you can be a lot more flexible in your party building. Overall, I would say that Diaz is one of, if not the most powerful sharpshooter that we currently have. Alright, and that does it for my Blossom Diaz guide. I'll try to get the other characters like Opera and Dark Albo out sometime this week. I couldn't do Opera because she's kind of bugged out right now, so hopefully they'll fix it with tomorrow's maintenance, and then I can finally get started on that. Regardless, that was it, so hope that was helpful, and I guess I'll see you all next time. Peace!